for multiple jurisdictions, US, Europe, and India, and customers business strategy for global IP protection. He is an engineer currently pursuing LLB from Karnataka State Law University. He has done his executive management program in business administration from IIM Ahmedabad, Gujarat. Welcome you, sir.
Thank you, Zita. Thank you very much for the kind welcome. And a very good afternoon to all the participants. I think I can, including me, there are 27. So I hope everybody's safe and healthy during the pandemic time. And I really pray that things come back to normal as soon as possible. Second thing, I would like to thank Dr. Ratish and team and the entire faculty members for putting together this program. This, of course, gives me an opportunity to present my views, ideas, and share with you all my experience. But that aside, I think this is a great platform for people to come together and share very, very valuable insights about IP. And I had according to my schedule, I could attend few sessions since 7th of September, and I found them really interesting. Some of them really, valuable even for me. So thank you again for inviting me and putting together this program. So without much of a delay, I wanted to keep it more interactive. So I have some slides and I would take them through all of you. I'll discuss that. And we can probably stop in between to take questions if that is the preferred mode. I understand that you will type in questions in the chat window, but I am otherwise also fine if someone wants to stop me on a particular slide and ask any question. And again, towards the end also, we will have a lot of time, I would say, for questions, and I'll be very happy to address them. And just a brief, I will now project my slide in the slideshow mode. And can one of you please confirm if you can see the slide?
Yeah, it is visible. It is visible in the presentation mode.
Excellent. Okay, so I was mentioning to Dr. Ratish a while ago that I have tried not to lay a lot of emphasis on the IP policies and laws and acts and everything which the government bodies take care of, because I presume that there are a lot of sessions that have already happened in the past and even during this program. So I have stuck to the topic in hand, IP as a strategic tool for protection of technology. And this is the theme, and more emphasis on strategic tool. What is IP strategy? What is the need for an IP strategy? How is it aligned to the overall business strategy? And is there a difference in terms of how different companies adopt these strategies and implement them? And in my experience of 15 years of working with companies like Qualcomm, Sony, Microsoft, and even European clients like Philips, I had the opportunity to closely interact with their IP heads to understand what strategy means to them. So what is their strategy when they go about spending so much on IP? So with that premise, I will now start the presentation. The current slide shows my representation of IP ecosystem, and this ecosystem is not in terms of who does what or how they interact with each other. Rather, please look at it in terms of, all the people who have high stakes in IP would be under one of the outer hexagons. For example, there may be individual inventors who are inventing under the capacity of a sole inventor, and they often get their patents and assign it to one of their collaborators. Then we have universities like yours or research labs who independently work on fundings from bodies, funding agents, and then they come up with innovations. Then we have, so you can see the color code is green, red, and orange. So green are people who may, benefit commercially out of the inventions. When I say may, there may be inventors, individual inventors or companies who invent for the public or for the society and not for financial gains. But the green color currently is for financial gains. So I can realize some revenue out of my investment. The red box is a very unique box and is actually a very, not very, I would say, recent entrant into this ecosystem. I would call it non-practicing or non-patent practicing entities. They're also called patent trolls. I'm sure you would have heard of this terminology. Troll, according to the ancient mythology and fables, Western means a person who will collect something from you to let you go or pass a bridge. It's like a toll collector. So these entities, for example, intellectual ventures is a good example. They don't actually invent themselves. What they do is they buy inventions from inventors, individual inventors, and they take it up, file it, and then get it granted, or they go for trademark registration, whatever, and they will keep pursuing all these companies who are potential infringers, sue them, get a lot of money from these companies, and give a tiny portion to the individual inventor and keep the rest. So it is a very, very successful and I would say disruptive business model. And why I have included this in the IP ecosystem, because even patent trolls have an IP strategy, which is very different from what others have. Okay, so I will spend some more time on it after I go through all the other components of the ecosystem. The orange hexagons you see are more or less the framework or the policy or the rule making bodies. For example, the patent offices of the respective countries, and then we have a World Intellectual Property Organization, which is the application authority for filing in multiple countries. So they do definitely make some revenue out of the filing and prosecution activities, but they do not invent themselves. They just process it, or they are the procedural bodies. You can also, I did not include the courts here because they are a little farther from the core inventive activity. At least patent offices are interacting with the inventors, and during the examination procedure, they do touch upon the inventive aspects. That's why they're here. The other orange hexagon is the standard governing body. For example, we have the 3G, the third generation partnership project for telecom inventions, and there are similar bodies for every domain. And these are basically to come together and define certain protocols or standards that would be confirmed to or would be followed by all such companies that are going to use the standard. So there are, like, Bluetooth is a standard technology and there are standard protocols, and likewise. And just one fact, I would not call it fun fact, but any patent which is overlapping a standard is called a standard essential patent and is considered to be the most valuable patent in that space. So that's why these bodies are very important, because there are lots of issues that come up in IP when somebody gets a patent on standards. Okay, and the three green boxes, we covered individual inventors already, we covered universities. The third one is innovation companies, like typical corporation like Intel, IBM, Microsoft, Apple, Google, or even pharmaceutical Merck or Monsanto. So these companies invest a lot of money. I think this is the biggest inventor or innovator in terms of funding, in terms of patenting activity, trademarks, and they even generate revenue out of their innovations. So they are a very important part of this ecosystem. And I would say, if you put a percentage distribution amongst the six components, innovation companies would most likely be the biggest component as per the patent office statistics. Now, in the center is the I mean the blue hexagon is basically the person who is benefiting the from the innovation. It can be it can be a clothing article, it can be a mobile phone, it can be, anything. Even I'm sure this web conference is possible because of some IP protecting, Google's technology, or the protocol of video streaming or audio streaming. So I represent the end user. You all represent the end user, and we are a very important part of this ecosystem, and that's why the biggest size and in the center, because we drive it, or we are the focal point for all these innovations. The innovations are actually funded, or they happen because we exist, because we have so many problems that these entities are trying to solve. The green entities are trying to solve, the red entities are trying to exploit the green entities to make money, and the orange entities are basically providing framework and, facilitating the whole process, so that the innovations from the green entities can reach the end user like you and me. So that was a quick summary of the IP ecosystem as I have created it for this session, particularly from a strategic viewpoint. That why? Because now there are 6 questions on the right hand side, which, if you kind of can answer for yourself on, and for everybody the answer might be different. Who are you in the ecosystem? Are you a part of a university, or are you working for a company like Google or Amazon? What is your role in that ecosystem? Basically, are you a patent examiner who is just responsible for examining patent applications, or are you an R&D head in a university, or you are a guide of a project guiding the postdoctoral research fellows or research fellows? What is your goal? Goal again is, what do I want to achieve in my role? What do I want to achieve? Do I need to simply create some awesome solution for COVID pandemic, or my role is to create a very cheap version of a ventilator because that's a problem? So what is my problem? What is my goal? Fourth point, what resources and time frame do you need to achieve those goals? So I might have a lot of ambitions, goals, and I might be very, very receptive to the problems around me for the users, end user, but I might not have resources. Resources, what are the resources we're talking about? We're talking about financial resources to begin with. Actually, that is a starting point. Then we need intellectual resources. If I need to collaborate with an image processing expert and a medical devices expert and vaccine, virologist, I need money, of course, but I need these people also to collaborate with me. And then I need a time frame. I can't simply create a vaccine in just 1 week or 2 weeks time and just give it. There is a time frame. There are tests that have to be done. Then there are a lot of data collection. Then there are all these authorities that would give me approval. Everything internally for a, let's say, a software development. I need time to test my software, test it with user groups. So it is not easy. Now, fifth point, given that I am somewhere in the ecosystem, I have a role, I have a defined goal, and luckily I have resources. Now I need a plan how to achieve those goals in any of these roles, in any of the hexagons, except the end user. I need to have a plan that how do I realize my goal, which is set for me. And lastly, very, very important, you cannot improve anything which you cannot measure. Somebody said it, I don't remember, somebody from GE, Jack Welch, that you cannot improve something you cannot measure. You have to measure the performance, and when you know that, oh, this was not as good as I imagined, then you put in more efforts. Similarly, for your role in IP, or for your planning in IP, or use of resources in IP, you need to define how do you measure success. So that was IP ecosystem for you. Now, since this session is on IP as a strategy to protect technology. Technology, we all understand, or probably fairly understood terminology is technology. I am also sure that strategy also is understood, but just to set a perimeter for our discussion today, I have chosen two definitions for strategy. The first one is strategy refers to a plan of action designed to achieve a long term or overall aim. So, not always long term, I would slightly want to tweak it. It may be a mid-term goal also, or it may be a short-term goal also. But any plan of action which I design will be strategy. Now, second and more inclusive definition given by Henry Mintzberg is as follows. There are five aspects to strategy. Strategy as a plan already we covered. It is nothing but a sequence of action items which we have to perform to achieve some goal, right? Second point is strategy as a pattern. So there are companies like GE, for example, who have a long history of the way they work, or Toyota, for example, in Japanese companies like Toyota. So they have a consistent pattern of innovating, not because they want to innovate. Innovating might have happened, by way of accident. They just wanted to solve a problem, and ooh, that's something innovative, and they applied for a patent. So whatever the case it is, there is a pattern that evolved based on past behavior in such companies, and that became a strategy for them. They did not start with, okay, what is my strategy? They just solved problems, and that became a strategy over a period of time. So that is why strategy can also be referred to as a pattern, a consistent pattern of past behavior. The next point is strategy as a position. Now, this is very, so the first 2 points, plan and pattern, are internal to the company or the entity in the ecosystem which we just saw. Now, the remaining three are not internal. They have some influence from the external bodies or external factors. For example, positioning of a company is based on the brand recognition or how the perception of a particular product is in the customer's mind. So that is also part of the strategy, that I want to be seen, or Apple wants to be seen as a very premium brand of mobiles or laptops or even displays. So that is the position they want, and that finds its way into strategy. Mind you, it is an external factor. It has external components that influence the strategy. The next point, the fourth point, is strategy as a ploy. So now that we all know technology is evolving at such a fast pace, especially in the electronics and communication and software and mobile devices space. You get to see a new mobile in every 2 months from the same company, pretty much, right? And in other areas, a lot of areas like heavy earth moving machineries from Caterpillar, you will see that the innovation is not as fast, and the position which Caterpillar has in the heavy earth moving machinery is solid. They are market leaders, and not by a margin of 1 or 2%, big percent, right? So, in terms of competition, you need to actually have a strategy. Again, this is an external factor and not an internal factor. So, I need to make sure that I outwit the competitor, outsmart the competitor, I beat the competitor in the current space I am in. So, that is also important for my strategy. Last but not the least, perspective. Perspective is again a very subjective term, but what I am referring to here is there is an ideology which every company follows, right? Tata Group of industries, or Tata Group, actually has an ideology. They have a value system for which they are known for. It can be seen in multiple instances and articles. So this perspective is important for the company to bake it into their strategy. They don't want to ignore it. It's very close to their heart. They want to make sure that their strategy is inclusive and reflective of this perspective. So, enough about strategy. Now we will slowly talk about, come closer to IP. IP strategy. Okay. So, strategy we defined. Now we also defined the IP ecosystem, Now let's kind of bring both of these, and combine them. So any plan of action, or any goal, and the sequence of action items I perform, any competition I want to beat, or any perception I want to build, right? All these things are in the IP space. Using IP becomes my IP strategy. It fuels into my IP strategy. So to fulfill my goals, I would use IP as a tool. And mind you, IP is not the only tool, but today's session is about IP as a strategic tool to protect technology. Now on the screen, you see there are actually five different, I would say, mindsets when you think about IP strategy. The four are, I mean, offensive, defensive, symbiotic, public welfare. And then there can be a mix of these, one or more of these four mindsets, and I'm calling it hybrid. Now in the order, so again, there is a color code which I have used to indent some meaning. Okay, offensive, red color, not necessarily indicative of bloodbath, but offensive means I am aggressive in my IP strategy. I want to block my competitors from gaining entry to my space or my business. So I will wait for the first opportunity to sue them, go behind them. I will have millions of dollars set aside as budget to sue these companies. Find them, actually sue them wherever I see them. Okay. Then companies who follow offensive IP strategies file patents for almost all inventions, meaning they don't even care about how big is the inventive threshold. It might be a very tiny incremental innovation versus it can be a big leap, or a big push between the imagination and reality boundary. You push it, and a lot of things which people imagined 2 years ago is now reality. They will file a patent for that also. They, of course, keep aside a lot of budget, hence, because they file for all the innovations, inventions, their maintenance and filing cost is very high. And they won't invest all this money just for fun. They make a lot of revenue by licensing or selling these patent portfolios they develop, right? So typical examples of offensive strategy followers would be, IBM, Qualcomm, and Intel. They aggressively sue and license their technologies. You can pretty much see Intel Inside written on every laptop. You can see Qualcomm's Snapdragon 865 chip in every mobile phone, pretty much high-end mobile phones you see. You can see Samsung displays and drivers in all the display devices. So they go offensive. These are big names. They have a lot of money. They spend a lot of money on research, even more money on filing and prosecuting these patents, and they generate a lot of revenue, sometimes in millions. The second strategy or mindset is defensive. So defensive is orange in color. I'm a peace loving guy. I don't want to go and sue others, but I don't want anybody to sue me. That's my primary focus. Just stay out of my business, or don't trouble me. Hence, what do? I actually go and file a patent and publish it. I mean, it gets published automatically after 18 months, and then I don't pursue it. So it is in the public domain. Nobody else can file and get a patent, and hence nobody can stop me. Remember, I cannot stop anybody else also, but I am happy. I don't bother. I'm a very peace-loving person. So they might even get a patent by just filing, and there is no office action, but they don't want to enforce it or assert their rights. They're just happy that nobody can stop me or sue me. Second aspect is, because they don't file for a lot of inventions, they are only worried about the critical ones that they don't want any troubles in. They will only file for, hence the cost is not as much as in case of offensive strategies. And lastly, they make sure that they keep the competitor out in terms of not being able to sue them. So they closely watch the competition. They know their own space. They file for only those cases where they don't want others to stop them. Remember. So that is defensive. The third is symbiotic. I think in one of the sessions I attended during this program, I think on day before yesterday or yesterday, somebody touched upon it. So basically, the term cross licensing is referred to in regards with the symbiotic strategy, where I know that somebody has a patent for, let's say, a drug, okay, and I have discovered, or I have actually found a new use of a known drug which has some composition, but I tweaked with those compositions little bit here and there, and I found out a new use for a new ailment, right? I can get a patent for sure. I can get a patent because of new use in US. It is patentable, but I cannot manufacture that drug because the other guy already has the patent for that drug, all compositions. Even if I tweak it, I will be infringing his patent. So typical arrangement, or typical compromise, let's say, or a collaboration is cross licensing. I actually can manufacture the drug and vary the composition and sell it for new use, and the other guy who already had a patent can manufacture and vary the composition and manufacture my according to my patent also and sell it. I'm okay, and both of us benefit. So that is a symbiotic IP strategy. It is more collaborative. You think about the other also and yourself. Both should benefit. Offensive, only I should benefit and others should actually suffer losses. Defensive, I should not be hurt. I should never be in losses. Only that. Symbiotic, I and the other both should benefit. The last out of the four is public welfare, open source. It is not necessarily an IP strategy. It just happens to be, whenever people devote all their innovations uh, and for public welfare or for the benefit of society during certain pandemic situations. For example, I don't know if you've heard of this, but a lot of companies have joined this COVID pledge, where they pledge their innovations, meaning they move their innovations from the offensive or defensive or symbiotic strategy to public welfare, and tell people that it is open for use because of their corporate social responsibility functions, or just as a goodwill gesture, as their contribution towards a pandemic situation like corona. So that is actually happening as we speak. There is a website for it, and big corporations can log in there and they can pledge their inventions. So any invention strategy which is for the benefit of humanity and where there is no commercial angle, profit and loss, I call it public welfare strategy, IP strategy. And and the last model, of course, is in the right in the center, hybrid, where I can combine one or more of these IP strategies. I can go in some, let's say in my display devices section, I can go defensive, but in the mobile section, I can go offensive. In the let's say battery charging, I can go symbiotic because somebody else holds a very important patent. And anything related to, let's say, purification of air, I can go public welfare. So one or more of these I can combine and I can formulate an IP strategy. Remember, strategy needs to be there whatever you do, and because you are investing your efforts into, even in public welfare. For example, if I create a novel uh, way of detecting, from a great distance, a person who is infected with corona, right? I may actually pledge it for free, but someone else might use it for commercial purposes. So I still need to have some strategy, although I don't want to benefit out of it. That means strategy is core to protecting technology, not just from misuse. Sorry, not just from commercialization by others, but also misuse of technology. In other words, there are certain inventions which, if openly are pledged, can be taken up by a lot of organizations and can be misused in a very different way. So that is about the basic, mindset or types of mindset or nature of IP strategies. Now, let us now elevate ourselves from IP strategy, which is actually a species of a more, generic term, business strategy. Rather, I would say corporate strategy is the broad umbrella or the grandfather. Business strategy can be the son, and IP strategy is probably grandson. And everything percolates down from the corporate strategy to business strategy to IP strategy. So when we talk about IP strategy, we can't ignore business strategy completely. So there is a Collis model, which just puts together a very fundamental business strategy element, diagram. So there is an objective, there is a scope, and there has to be some advantage. Okay, all these terminologies are pretty, straightforward. So there is a goal and aspiration. I want to earn revenues. I want profitability. I want to grow my company from 10 people to 100 to 1,000 people, and I want to have a significant market share in the space of, let's say, N95 masks. What is the scope? Where to compete? So which is the market I'm selecting? Is it US or Brazil, where the largest number of cases are being detected, or shall I go for India, where IP laws can be easily flouted and enforcement will be very difficult? All that. What type of customers I am catering to, what is their pain point, what is the need of the hour, what is the product line I'm thinking about, or variations, N94, N90, and just a cloth mask examples. Geography we already covered, where is it that the demand is more. And value chain very often used and in multiple contexts, but in the current context, how do you transfer value, whatever you are offering, to the end user at a cost which is acceptable to the end user? The third component or element is advantage, how to compete. So you don't want to invest any money in any strategy, or all these business school jargons and courses are taught, and they're very highly paid executives. They won't be paid so much if in the end they don't give back some advantage. What kind of advantage it can be? It has to be some sort of differentiated value proposition as against the competitor. It has to be some cost position in terms of high pricing. Nobody goes to a store and asks, an Apple store, and would try and negotiate that, can you give me 25% discount? No, there is a solid cost position there. You can't. You go there because you know that you have to pay that much, right? So those are very fundamental rudimentary elements of business strategy, just to bring in some context. Now, I have taken few examples of innovation companies like Fujitsu, and in the coming slides, I have one from Nikon, and also from IBM. And these are few examples just to illustrate how these companies, innovative companies, think about intellectual property strategy and business strategy. So you can see Fujitsu's global IP strategy. The IP strategy is in the bottom left quadrant: acquisition, maintenance, and use of IP rights. Acquisition means you will see that they probably are not very keen on creating assets. They want to acquire, they want to maintain and use IP rights. So creation doesn't come as a word in their strategy at all. Second is, they want to evaluate the technology trends, how the technology is maturing, and they don't want to miss out on the technology wave. It's a different question altogether whether they have missed it or not. But from a strategy point of view, they want to. be aware of what the technology trend is. They are also wanting to analyze patent portfolios as an example of IP and understand how the innovation landscape looks like. Technology trend is what kind of technology is becoming popular or adopted. Portfolio analysis will give me a trend that what kind of innovations are being protected. That means there is more value there. And lastly, they don't want to think local in Japan or in Asia. They want to have a global viewpoint about other markets and not just in Japan. Alongside, they have given the research and development strategy, they have a business strategy, they have a standardization strategy, and all this weaves into their corporate strategy as a flower petals, coming to the center, to the core. So this is just an example of business strategy and intellectual property strategy linked to the corporate strategy. Now, there are further examples of one of a mature organization and the other of a startup or a company which is in the initial phases of innovation. Now, there is a difference, and I'll point that out. So the hand pointer shows the IP strategy block in both the examples. In the first example, you see there is a business strategy, and based on internal analysis and external analysis, there is a strategy or a vision given to the IP department. It is not, so you can see that there is no arrow that goes back from the IP strategy to business strategy. The only arrow is inventive capability is informed, or they discuss what is it that we can bite into. And then there is a strategy formulation, it is given, and rest is all execution. IP strategy, this is the IP vision converted to a plan with milestones, short term, mid-term, long term. There may be IP teams that are in-house teams, and there may be teams that are not in the company, but the IP function is outsourced, and so on and so forth. It goes on till they actually keep creating IP portfolios. Now, I have used the word portfolios in the previous slides also. So portfolio is nothing but a collection of assets. So it can be trademark portfolio, it can be patent portfolio, it can be design portfolio. It's nothing but a group of assets. They are grouped not randomly together. They are grouped in a particular logic based on some analysis, that if I cover this space entirely, I would actually block the entire space and would be having a monopoly. So, for example, Intel has the best portfolio for chips. All the processors we're talking about for laptops, Intel has a very solid portfolio for all the chips, the i3, i5, i7, 9th generation, 11th generation. There is nobody who can match up to the might of Intel in that space. Similarly, Qualcomm, the same chip in mobile, the Snapdragon series, 6 series, 7 series, 8 series, every phone will have the same chip, or they will buy from the same company, Qualcomm, because they have a huge portfolio. So just wanted to let you know about the word portfolio, because it will come up again and again. Now, in the second example, you see typically in startups, it's very flexible, and the business vision and the strategy is communicated by the founder, and slowly they will want the patenting activity to start. But you can see there is a feedback. That means you can see the IP intelligence block. There is an arrow that goes back straight to the business vision and strategy, meaning the based on what IP we are able to create, there can be a feedback to alter or slightly modify the business strategy, which is not possible in the first example, as I mentioned. So this is a different kind of strategy, and more flexible, more collaborative, and usually found in startups and initial phase innovators who have like 10 to 15, 20, 50 patent applications. And the patent folks are kind of considered at par or not really, subordinate to the business folks. They work together. And of course, the business strategy can be abstracted down to product strategy and technology strategy. Then the IP strategy comes in where, as you see, the licensing activities, portfolio creation management activities, IP intelligent activities, if there is an infringement, even that. Now, all these activities also happen in the first example. The only difference is there is no feedback loop to the business strategy department that, excuse me, sir, please change or alter the strategy. I think this is what our company should be doing. Now, now again, there are a lot of companies. I'm talking about big corporations who have, sizable IP portfolios, and they want to keep on building on the past innovations. They keep working from there and do something in present. At the same time, they also think future, that how they want to steer the company. It is never discontinuous or sudden that Amazon was into online retail market, and suddenly it never happened that Amazon diversified into cloud services, or one fine morning Mr. Bezos got up and said that I'm also going to offer media streaming using Prime, Amazon Prime. No, it never happens like that. There is, I mean, especially for companies like Amazon, we will see in the coming slides, is one of the, not the most valuable company in 2020 is Amazon, with 212 billion worth of assets. So we will come to that. Now, in terms of innovation, they keep on doing it, or they think strategically to build upon the past. They have a solid position, then they do something slightly different in the present. Even if diversification is there, there is a solid logic behind it. It can't be completely discontinuous and disruptive, non-related to the overall company's vision. So this is again an example of Nikon, a Japanese company. By the way, I follow a lot of Japanese innovation companies because uh, in my 15 years, I have worked with a lot of corporations and in-house counsel departments. But the way IP strategy is thought about in Japan is just unparalleled. And this is a personal opinion again, because they're very micro. They may not be able to talk very good English, but their thought process is extremely micro. And that is what we see in terms of number of filings everywhere in US or PCT in Europe. Japanese companies are always there amongst the top 10. A good number of Japanese companies like Sony, Toyota, and a lot of other companies. Canon is, I think, number 4 and 5 in US. So that's why I have borrowed two of the Japanese companies' models. Now Nikon follows this. The third point is, as I said, they have to plan for future, execute in present, and build upon the past. When I say build upon the past, why past is important, especially in IP strategy. You get IP rights, or anything like a patent has an expiry of date or a term of 20 years. You always want to make sure that after 20 years, what do you do? Amazon owned, by the way, a patent called one-click patent. It was very famous, and last year or the year before, it got expired. That patent is famously quoted, that really made Amazon what it is today in the online space. So now that Amazon is out of that patent period, definitely they would have thought about how to build upon that legacy and keep filing more patents or trademark or whatever way they want to formulate their IP strategy, so that they retain their position and not kind of lose it immediately after 20 years of one-click patent. So you have to plan resources, timeline, consult with all the stakeholders, because stakeholders keep changing in big companies, and the new leadership may not be so IP pro or pro innovation. They might just want to acquire and spend money, right? And the fourth component of the plan is basically, how do you measure success? Now, a very important part of the strategy is, as I said, a lot of money is spent in hiring such people to strategize and to execute that strategy. You definitely need some returns. And how best to get a return other than licensing your technology or selling your portfolio to a collaborator and making money out of it. And as I said, Qualcomm or Samsung or Intel, they have mastered the art of licensing, I would say, and they have very very thriving and very profitable licensing departments. And these components in IP strategy, you also think about our target markets globally. If you're thinking about which countries I would want to file and have my IP presence. For example, if Brazil needs a lot of syringes, and if I'm an innovator in this syringe design or the needle design, I would definitely want to think about Brazil as a market and should budget accordingly, go for so many filings and so many countries. uh, this is actually an expansion of I just talked through the Nikon's IP strategy. On the right hand side, you can see different divisions: the operations division, the R&D division, and the intellectual property division, working in close collaboration to fuel each other. And the R&D division basically churns out inventions, but they can't simply be unguided inventions. They will be fed lot of intelligence that these are the white spaces, these are inventive gaps, these are the problems from the customers, or there is a well felt need, so please invest in that. The business operations division would make sure that whatever inventions are coming out is reduced to practice in the form of products, and the logistics are taken care of. It reaches the correct market at the correct pricing. The pricing strategy, marketing strategy, branding strategy, all that is operations division. R&D, invent. Intellectual property division would now think about what patents I mean, there are, let's say, 10 innovations. I have a budget of, let's say, 3. Which 3 out of those 10 I should select, which is in line with my business strategy? So there is a very close collaboration between multiple departments to execute an IP strategy. And it is actually, sometimes I feel when I talk to a lot of people, some people, sorry, I feel that it is misunderstood that IP is only for protecting my patent. That is a technology, sorry. I invented a technology, I want to protect it. What am I protecting it from, right? uh, I actually probably want to file for an IP because I want to earn money, I want to commercialize it, I want to prevent an abuse, or I want to protect it from an infringer. They're all linked, but maybe we need to think a little broader IP strategy. And there is another slide where I would also deviate from the typical mindset of I just need to protect my technology to other aspects, that why should I need IP strategy. Now, I would just want to on the third point expand upon, like if you see on the bottom side, there is a typical patent life cycle which Nikon follows. Okay, so they start with in the intellectual property division of Nikon. This patent life cycle is followed. They determine a theme. They call it a theme. That means what is the theme in which they want to invent or identify potential innovations, right? That theme, let's say for Nikon, in the area of DSLR cameras, for example, it can be the autofocal, or the auto adjustment of focal length in the automatic mode in DSLR cameras. Suppose that is a theme, then they go to the next phase of identifying inventions with potential of huge potential of commercialization, or it really has solved a great problem in the prior art. Then the application phase, of course, all of us are aware: draft a patent, file a patent. Dr. Ratish was talking about claim construction a while ago. Okay, all that happens in the application phase, and then you get it granted. Like that, you keep repeating this and you build a patent portfolio. This is how Nikon works. So in the third point, if you see how is the theme determined, it is important, and I'm sure you have heard of these terminologies: pattern landscapes, white space analysis, opportunity analysis, technology scouting, competitive landscape. All these would feed into that one step of theme determination. And again, all this happens in intellectual property division of the diagram on top. Now, again, this is easy said than done. Like, a lot of people say that we have, a lot of companies claim to have a very solid, robust patent process or IP department, but they are not doing as well as others. So some of the other planning or some of the other detail is not flushed out properly. That's why they're not as successful. How do you measure success? Very important, and I keep coming back on this. You cannot improve something you cannot measure. And strategy is a very abstract term, like patents, and I'll come to that. It's a very abstract term, and I can say that my strategy is very good. Your strategy is only good. So how do we measure and compare? And there are no standard metrics, but the outcomes are used as a measure of the strategy followed by a company. So if you ask me, Intel has a very successful patent strategy. Qualcomm, I am working with closely, has a very aggressive. It should be a case study if they make it public. Has a very robust patent strategy. Likewise, so no, Japanese companies, they have a very methodological micro patent strategy, and they're giving the American companies and European companies a run for their money in any space you talk about: printers, cameras, automotive vehicles, sound, Sony, everything. So that's why measure success. It's very important. Okay. This is a little verbose slide, but I just wanted to, gather your attention over the blue blocks on top. This is typically what happens in a patent life cycle. Everybody knows that we have to go file a patent, get a patent granted, and license it. But there are lots of activities. The broad heads like innovation idea and idea validation, so sorry, invention idea and idea validation, is basically a lot of people submit in companies like Google. There are a lot of initiatives that people can simply submit an idea, and there are hundreds, and if not, I don't know, thousands of ideas that keep coming. Now, all these ideas are reviewed by somebody. So wherever I have highlighted the green text, green blocks are very core to strategy. The orange blocks under monetization is the outcome, the measure of success of my IP strategy. Now, in the first broad head, invention, idea, and idea validation, somebody would have to study the market and the competition landscape, and feed it back to the R&D division that, boss, this is a white space. Please, focus more here. What you submitted is already being followed by the competitor. It is not patentable. So after all that analysis done, it is fed to the IP disclosure phase where a proper invention disclosure is written in a format. Next is, still it is not final that it will go ahead and it will be filed as a patent application. So there is a very comprehensive technology and IP market review. Here a little senior folks would come in who have a lot of experience in that space, and they will say that strategically this invention may be good, but it is not strategically aligned to our imperative, so we should let it go. There is an IP committee, in many companies, they have this IP committee where they finally take a call whether or not to file a particular kind of IP, or keep it a trade secret, file it as a defensive publication under defensive IP strategy I mentioned, or go offensive and file it in so many jurisdictions Brazil, for example, in case of a syringe invention, like that. The IP committee is a very key decision making committee. After that is all the routine stuff where the patent attorney comes into picture and drafts the patent application, prosecutes, and the patent is issued. So you don't need to go into the details because it is a little further from the strategy. It is all the, I mean, you have set the ball rolling. Now, because of inertia or whatever momentum you call it, the ball has reached the issue stage. Now, after the issue, you want to monetize it. Again, monetization experts, very well paid licensing executives and licensing attorneys, make sure that they monetize licensed technology and generate a lot of revenue. Monetization is not easy because you have to put a number to a patent, that my patent is worth, I don't know, in Indian currency, let's say 10 lakhs. If somebody wants to buy my patent, it is 10 lakhs. How do you evaluate a patent which is a Word document or a certificate and put a number to it? So it's a very different type of a skill per se, because it has a market component, how important the technology is in the market. It has a financial component, that how much value this is worth, and this is an intangible asset, mind you, and it has a time factor because it has a term. So how much is it worth, and how much should I quote for my asset? So in typical mergers and acquisitions, or selling of patent portfolios, this department is very, very busy and active. Even litigations also, this department comes into picture. And the outcome of this head, monetization, is a true reflection or metric of a successful IP strategy. Okay, this has way less text than, lesser text than the previous one. So why do we need an IP strategy? Again, specifically for corporates, I'm talking about, because they represent the biggest percentage of the IP ecosystem we saw in the first slide. Now, IP strategy. So when you see any product which has a patent pending written, okay, or when you see that Apple or Samsung or any product, when you see, they mention that patented technology used, right? So that enables that company to go for an aggressive pricing, because there is some value which is not available in the other devices. Why? Because they hold some IP, and when you hold an IP, you can stop others from using your innovation. So I can go a little aggressive in pricing. Any increase in my pricing, and I'm talking about premium pricing, not normal, of course, but premium pricing gives me my profits. Apple is one of the, not one of the most profitable company in the world, because they have aggressive pricing. They don't give you simply 50% discount and all that. They're always high priced and they don't care. Second is brand creation and retention. IP strategy helps me create a brand. So if I keep filing patents, and if I keep innovating, actually more from an innovation perspective, I keep coming up in displays, for example, the latest technologies, organic LEDs, OLEDs, which originally was introduced by LG, a Korean electronics giant. But Panasonic and Sony also manufacture OLED technologies or this thing. Little bit of research you do, you will quickly come to know that LG supplies OLED panels to Panasonic and Sony. That's why Sony is expensive than LG. Now, I know that LG manufactures, or LG is the creator of the OLED, organic light emitting diode technology. In my mind, there is a perception. In my mind, I recognize LG as a brand which believes in innovation, which has very cool features and products. And I remember LG, that logo and smile. That is IP strategy working behind it. The fourth component is market leadership. Again, you can talk about, let's say, sound bars. there is a sound bar which people used in combination with their television to kind of enhance the audio experience. And if I now say Dolby, I'm sure all of you know what Dolby is. It is not the name of my pet. It is actually a company that has pioneered in audio technology. They define how audio has to be experienced pretty much. There is no other competitor near or far them. And the latest technology is Dolby Atmos, which is basically surround, and the sound will be, it would feel as if it is coming from top and from behind and everything. Immersive experience, market leadership. So when you see Dolby, digital Dolby Atmos on any speaker or in a theater when you go, Dolby has a market leadership. Bose has a customer perception of being high class audio equipment. There is a brand, Bose. Next is competitive advantage. Of course, if you have solid IP strategy and if you make your brand solid, if you're perceived as a very innovative company, if you have a leadership, you definitely have a competitive advantage because the competitors haven't matched you in these parameters. They don't have a solid IP. Their trademark you don't even recognize. Some of the companies, when you hear you haven't heard of them and you say, oh, I haven't heard of this company, what do they do? That means they don't probably have a solid IP strategy. They don't have a trademark which you have seen or you have recognized. Last but not the least, consistent growth. IP leads to growth because of the competitive advantage, because of aggressive pricing. You keep earning a lot of money. If you just talk about financial growth, you earn. You have solid revenue growth. You have excellent profitability. The share values would go up and so on and so forth. The company grows. Hence, IP strategy is of supreme importance for corporates who want to grow. The next slide actually makes it very evident. So this is borrowed from howmuch.net. The source is mentioned, and I would help you read this graphical representation. Top left, you see the color codes for industries. Top right, you see the brand value, more than 200 billion. Okay. And then towards the bottom, you have three groups of circles. One is for North America, second is Europe in the center, and the third is Asia. The size of the bubble or the circle represents the value of the brand. Okay, you can see Amazon bottom left, biggest bubble, number one on the list. The color is green. That means if you now refer to the legend above, it is in the retail space, is the most valuable brand of 2020. They have solid IP strategy backing their very valuable, not big portfolio, very, very valuable small portfolios. Okay. If you see number two is Google. Google has filed a lot of patents. They did not start early. 1999, they did not file a lot of patents, but starting 2006-7, there is an increased patenting activity. And it is the second most valuable company. Apple third, fourth Microsoft. So this has about top 15, but you can see Samsung is number 5. You have heard of Huawei also, I'm sure, number 10. Facebook is number 7, Walmart number 8. So these companies have grown significantly from their inception date, and they have a very, very solid IP portfolio. They spend money on protecting their IP. IP, by the way, is not only patents. Most of these logos which you see are trademark, not most, all of them. There is number 11 Mercedes in Europe, 65 billion. That logo, who doesn't know or who doesn't recognize? So there is an IP in play behind all these successfully growing aggressive companies, and I just wanted to showcase that using this graph, using this graphical representation. So now towards the right, again, I wanted to reflect upon few questions. Are Apple products expensive? You answer that and you see that Apple is the third most valuable brand. Do you see these logos and can you recall these companies easily? The Philips logo, the Visa, Citibank, AT&T, Motorola's M. Have these companies grown in the last 10 years or 20 years? Definitely. Do they have a solid IP strategy, which is, by the way, not independent or isolated, aligned to their business strategy? Definitely yes. So this was about the top 100 most valuable brands in 2020. Well, now this is all again abstract. As I told you, I keep spending a lot of money. What do I get in return? We have proof. History is replete with lot of instances, lot of cases where there were damages awarded in patent litigation to the company that is infringing. And the figures in the right hand side graph is actually in millions. So the first case, Idnix Pharmaceuticals case, is $2.5 billion, 1.6 billion in the second case. So such is the magnitude of damages that are awarded by the US courts for a patent litigation case. And these are the top 10 between the year 97 to 2017. And I'm sure there are many more to come. You can see number 5 is Apple versus Samsung is 1 billion almost. So that means it actually pays. And not every patent is valuable. So I'll maybe go through the pointers towards the left. Value of IP is abstract. It is not, you cannot put a number to it the moment you invent. It has to be drafted in a particular way. Patent attorneys have to come together. IP laws are amended. And by the time you get it granted, its worth probably has been lost or it has been significantly enhanced in terms of coverage. So it is not abstract. And I can also, I'm as good as anybody, in guessing the worth of a patent, which is a document. But the real worth is actually set in the court. When there is a damage awarded, I can say the Idnix Pharmaceuticals patent was worth $2.5 billion. It is true. It is proven. Second point, damages do not only include the patent royalty or the licensing or the lack of that. It has a lot of other components built into. For example, I have a patent which is infringed by somebody else. I can actually wait for that infringement to become big. When I say big, in terms of the frequency of infringement, the number of products in which my patent is being used, I want it to be a sizable quantity. Why? Because when I assert infringement, yeah. Is there a question? Is somebody trying to ask a question? Hello? Okay. Yeah. So point number 2, again, damages do not only, as somebody was mentioning, patent litigation, exactly. The damages in patent litigation do not only include what would have been paid as a royalty fee or a licensing fee. It includes a lot of other things. Interestingly, it also includes the attorney fees. So the typical litigation attorneys work based on a percentage, 10%. That means whatever damage is awarded, 10% of that value is the attorney fee. In this case, it would be about 254 million. So third point is, because IP is subjective or there is an abstract value to a trademark of Mercedes, how much is it worth? The trademark, it's not a very easy mathematical deterministic calculation with some formula. No. Hence, IP, according to me again, is like a precious stone. It is like a precious stone because it is, there are a lot of people who claim that they have found or they can sell. You are not sure whether it is precious stone or not. There are all these standard bodies who claim that they will give certifications for the actual, what do we say, extent of preciousness or how valuable they are. But again, it's difficult. Only few sellers you trust. Fourth, again, taking the analogy from precious stones, IP also has its own set of parameters like the four C's of a diamond. I have a slide coming up on diamond. So there are four C's, or four words which start with C to define or to kind of express the worth or value of a diamond. We will come to that, and we will see what in IP the corresponding factors can be. Fifth, uh, typically technologists and inventors may not always have a great or detailed understanding of the IP ecosystem. They are experts in their domain, 100% agreed. But when it comes to from the innovation to the patent application to the grant and to licensing and to litigation and awarding this kind of damage, they're not experts. So it is not correct to actually take their opinion in terms of does IP protection really help, or is it really worth investing in IP strategy. Sixth point. This is, by the way, interesting, and I at least was surprised when I myself came to know about it. 80% of total patent applications in the world that are filed are non-performing assets. They are just papers. You can throw them. They are not useful. They're like those precious stones which claim to be precious, but they're not. You can use them as paperweight. So only 20% are worth the money you spend. But those 20% of patents earn enough money to cover up for, not just cover up, actually earn more than the entire money you spent on the remaining 80% also. Still, people keep filing. As I said, they want offensive patenting strategy. They keep on filing. Only 10-20% of those patents are worth their salt. Point 7. Yeah, it is a gamble. There is a waiting period. There is a time frame of getting a patent granted in terms of a patenting strategy. So you can't really assess the value till you get it granted and it is licensed or it is challenged in the court or somebody infringes. So there has to be a solid belief that IP strategy investment is justified. I need to spend money. I will reap benefits later. Eighth, not many companies have the financial resources to actually invest so much as other companies. So I have spent a couple of slides on startups because it is a bigger problem for them as compared to the developed or mature companies. So investing in IP should be done very, very judiciously. You have this funding round and you have this money. How much of it you want to spend in IP, because you have to keep the company alive. And it's better to file those two very solid patents than going for 10 useless patents. That's money well spent. Point 9, last point. Uh, Again, based on my experience with different companies, patenting strategies differ. Some companies have high, medium, low categorization of their inventions, and they set aside more budget for high value patents and very less budget for low value patents. And those valuations can be based on multiple models. They have their internal mechanism. So it's different, and we cannot have a common, uniform, world-class strategy standard for IP and ask all the companies to follow. Now, I was mentioning diamond a while ago. So the four C's of a diamond: carat, color, clarity, and cut. Again, not explaining it in detail, but I'm sure those of you who have bought diamonds or have read about it, These are the 4 C's that define how valuable a diamond can be, from, let's say, De Beers, you know. So similarly, and if these 4 factors are used and there is a value or a range of value that is considered by everybody as very good, that is a good diamond sample and you have to pay more for it, right? Similarly, people have tried to create some quantitative models to determine how valuable it is. Again, not valuable in terms of number to the second decimal, no. They just want to understand, is it high value, low value, and medium value, something like that. So in patents, it's about claim coverage and scope, that how much does it cover. And I'm sure most of you would know that a patent document has a claim section, and claims are written in a manner in which verbally they try to claim something. And when I say something, it is like a property, intellectual property, which is intangible, it is in space, it is abstract. And that, since it is abstract and it is as wide as possible initially, the patent office tries to reject it and you keep reducing it. So more the scope, broader the scope, higher the value of a patent. Extent of use or application. If I innovate something and file for a patent about something which is used by everybody on earth, I mean, it becomes an essential thing, or it is the frequency of use is high. For example, mobile phone, then it is valuable as compared to a particular, removal of a particular chemical from water, where that removal has to be done only and only in a tiny city, let's say the smallest city in the world, Vatican City, or sorry, not the smallest city, the smallest country in the world. So the use case is not high. That means I may not be able to, generate a lot of value from that patent. Third, very, very important and a lot of times undervalued, is legal validity. Your patent has to be enforceable. It has to stand the test of time. It has to be drafted nicely. It should be devoid of all the prior art rejections or imperfections, and it should not give up scope, at the same time go through the examination process in the patent office. And when I say legal validity, it should be valid in the court of law. When litigated, nobody should be, especially the infringer, because infringers do this. The first line of defense is, your patent is invalid. Why are you asserting infringement? So my patent should stand the validity test in the court, and it is purely legal, I would say. Hence, a patent that has stood the test of time or earns me $2.5 billion in damages is definitely valuable. Last, inventive strength or delta. This is technical in terms of a solution which you provide, and the previous solutions have a lot of problems, but the current solution is awesome. It just is amazing. Hence, it is valuable because it solves a very, very important problem in today's life. Moving on to trademark. Trademark, again, perceived brand value of, let's say, the McDonald's M or the KFC. So there is a trademark and there is a Coca-Cola trademark. There is a value associated with it. That value, of course, has been built over time, over years, and it can stay alive forever, till such time they keep manufacturing products and using their trademark. Hence, trademark can be much more expensive, and practically it can be mortal. It can be kept alive after generations. We might actually hand it on to the next generation and the next, and maybe few hundreds and thousands years later, they would say the oldest trademark is Coca-Cola, 2000 years. Okay. And second point under trademark is recognition and association of goods with brands. So how quickly or how easily can you associate Coca-Cola brand and the aerated drink they manufacture? And how easy, even for a child to an adult to everybody, because it has gone through generations, that determines how valuable the trademark is. Copyright. Now, there are some celebrated authors. Number of copies sold is kind of a recognition of the content, or there has to be some merit that It became the New York bestseller, and hence it is valuable. Author's reputation based on past works. Okay, so the current work sucks. It probably is not as good, but the previous work from the author was really commendable. Hence, there is some value associated even with the current work. Intangible, but some value. Then, of course, from external factors, experts have critically acclaimed. I have not sold lot of copies. I don't have any reputation from the past work, but the other authors or industry, I don't know, veterans or leaders or pioneers in writing have quoted my work in some article or some interview. Immediately, my not so good book or not so good painting becomes valuable because some celebrity bought it. So IP can be valuable, and interestingly, due to a lot of factors in patent, trademark, copyright. I haven't covered other forms of IP. Uh, yeah. So now shifting my focus to strategy for startups. Why is it important for startups to have an IP strategy? Uh, IP, first of all, is not should not be forcefully applied to every startup. Some startup may not just have a scope of IP. It is just doing what others are doing, but they have solved the logistical issue which was there for the other companies, and they get a market share. So there is some innovation, but probably not worthy of an IP strategy. There can be first to market, and they can still maintain the market leadership there. But those innovations or those startups that have a technology component as their backbone, it is very important for them to protect their IP. So they should protect the core idea, which is their foundation. They should create and maintain an advantage vis-a-vis the competitor. I don't know how many of you would have had an opportunity to see a startup presentation to an investor. There are sections. If you just look up on Google, there are various sections for a startup founder presentation to the investor community to get some investments. So in that, you have to talk about what is the core idea. Second is, what is the barrier to entry? Is there a competitive advantage you have? And why is it going to be difficult for the competitor to replicate, copy, or use? Okay, so I'm just borrowing the ideas from that presentation. Third is protect the R&D investments, both time and effort. Fourth is, of course, generate revenue. If you have a very solid patent, which is like a standard patent, like in 5G communication, for example, you can generate revenue by licensing. You just don't need to actually do anything else. Just invent, file a patent, and it is such a good patent, get it granted, and then license it. Nothing else. You just generate revenue. Next is defend the company in case of a lawsuit. Of course, people might come behind a successful company always. They want to kind of shut down your business because it is hitting their financial interests. So they want to sue you. So you can defend, you can have your patents, you can have your technology protected. If you become a brand, you definitely want to protect your brand, like Coca-Cola or other brands, and you do not want to miss out on the brand protection and registration because it will really help you later. You can attract investors. So this is a very interesting point. I was talking to one of the patent attorneys working for a league law firm in US. So he said that for a startup company, when they present it to an investor community without any patents filed, they were asking for a 500 million, 500,000, small startup, 500,000 fund. They were refused. Then somebody told them that you need to protect your idea, file a patent. They only filed two provisional applications, okay? And the application number was mentioned, and you can use patent pending in US after filing the provisional application. And they went for a funding round, and they got 1.5 million funding. Same presentation, this was changed. They just said that IP protection sought. So the investor community thinks that if they have filed for a patent, their technology cannot be copied, my money is safe. or I can, if I like the technology, of course, I like the technology, I like the solve problem solve solution statement. I want to invest in this company. So it is very, very important to have an IP strategy. And on the right hand side, typical mistakes which people make, again, they postpone, they don't take it very seriously, or they handle it based on Google research. Google is the ultimate expert for all the topics, including IP, and they can simply figure out everything using Google. Then, or there is another extreme where they make the solution very complicated, convoluted, lot of documents and legalese and jargons that it is of no use to actually enforce. Third is timely identify intellectual property where all it is applicable and file for a protection. Next is, sometimes confidential information is shared in a presentation which bites them later, even while raising funds and everything. I think the first presentation itself should happen after you have filed for a patent. Then improper, IP assignments meaning, you assign the IP rights to a company or a firm that can exploit the IP for generating revenue. Sometimes there is no understanding between the founding members or a collaborating partner. Then the incorporation itself is delayed or not in time, and the invention happened before the incorporation. Hence, it cannot be owned by, it has to be assigned. So, a lot of other complexities arise due to timelines. Then, about shares, when there is an investor agreement, or how do you dilute your ownership? Do you also give up on IP or not? Not many people really care, but it is very important to take proper counsel on all these things. Written agreements and contracts are lacking in the IP clause, or specifically spelling out what is the strategy component and strategically owning it. Other things you can even share. Non-compliance with employment laws. I have spoken to certain startups where the inventors of their invention they are protecting is working with another firm, which is also in the same domain. It is complete violation of employment laws, and he cannot be named as an inventor. If he's named as an inventor, his current employer can actually use that invention due to their employer agreement. So all these things people probably are not aware, or they don't take it seriously. So I thought I'll mention it. And then over promising to investors. Bottom side, you have, I mean, this is just a very rudimentary diagram for phases of startup, in a software domain I'm working with. Idea validation, solution validation, outlining features, software development, and minimum viable product release. So in at least the first two, four phase 1, 2, 3, 4, definitely people have to be very careful wherever there is IP protected. And that is what I have mentioned on this slide quickly. The first stage involves exploring companies' business model, strategy, and objectives, understand it. For the IP strategy, how do I need to proceed? First stage, understand business model and the company's overall strategy and objectives. Second is identifying which of those business objectives I can support using intellectual property. Not everything I can. Third is the specific IP assets that are relevant. That means I need to now invest in this particular activity or R&D or research and develop. Because finance is going to be a constraint for me, I should focus on probably my best 1 or 2 ideas and take it to the fourth stage where I have specific IP related actions like filing, and in which all jurisdiction, prosecution, grant, and everything in order. That should be always mentioned in a roadmap, timescale, presentation, and has to be followed through. This is IBM's innovation cycle. Typically, they say, and I have used hand pointers for the second, third, fourth, and fifth step because IP, has a common play there. So the first step in IBM's innovation cycle is assessment of experience. Experience is basically of an existing technology or customer's experience with a prototype. Then second is sensing and envisioning. That means what is the trend and what is the scenario, define what are the opportunities and threats, and develop a vision. There you at least need some IP landscape and understand what is the technology landscape today. Third is ideation, which is the actual inventor in work. They will, generate ideas, possible solutions, run tests and prototypes. Again, very confidentially, has to be handled, documented, and you have to evaluate which idea is the best. Fourth, evaluation. As I said, not just evaluation on the floor and in terms of problem solving, but market feasibility, how feasible this is, and how much time does it take to take it to the market. Fifth is development, which is pretty much the you have the engine and the framework. Now you kind of put it all together, develop code, and then you kind of release it in the realization phase. So there can be copyright, IP rights like copyright. There can be trademark rights. There can be patents that can be filed. There can be design implications. So design protection can be done. Each of these partners or employers have to sign a confidentiality agreement, non-disclosure agreement, assignment agreement. All these things have to be taken care of in IP to protect your technology. Yeah. I have 2, 3 more slides, so just so that you know that it's not going to take a long time now. So this is the typical hierarchy. I just thought from a human resources perspective, I create a pyramid and show you the visibility and the kind of exposure people have. So from the bottom, of course, I'm not going to read out all the roles, but you can see the chief IP officer, the green portion, top guy. Then the next is vice president licensing, patents or intellectual property. Then the next is IP in-house counsel, basically patent attorney community. Then portfolio managers and paralegal. So this group is the IP group, the IP division. And you can see, so they are the subject matter experts of the processes and the laws, not necessarily IP strategy. They are at best executing the IP strategy. Okay. The top part, CXOs, the CEOs, CFOs, CTOs, I wanted to say CI, Chief Information Security Officer, all these people, they have a business and financial view of IP assets. IP is just one of the aspects for the assets for them. It is not the entire company. They have a lot of things to take care of. So they will talk about business strategy and the financial goal, and the general counsel will translate those business strategies to IP strategy. So you can see the left-hand side, the CXOs will put forward a business strategy and the vision. The general counsel, the blue color box, is the person who knows law also, corporate law in general, maybe an IP attorney also, but he knows the management science to understand and translate the business strategy to IP strategy and vision. He will put together some governance framework to see whether we are progressing or not. And the green community, the chief intellectual property officer or the vice president licensing or attorneys, they execute the strategy and also commercialize the innovations. So this is the typical pyramid of an innovation company, I would say a big company, where they take IP strategy very, very seriously. And I've worked with some of them. Okay, so the last part, which I said I won't be covering in detail because a lot of other presenters would have covered. So the ecosystem had, as I said, the governing bodies, the enablers so-called for this entire IP strategy and all that. To let that work, there are four of these I have identified. One is the patent office community, the US Patent Office, Indian Patent Office, Japan Intellectual Property Office, European Patent Office. Then there are international IP organizations like WIPO, and then there are the lawmaking governing bodies like, our laws are made in the parliament, right? There is a bill that is passed and it becomes an act. So they can change and they can impact this ecosystem by way of modifications. I have included courts also, because courts would impact the damages in a litigation suit. So we can't completely write them off from this particular slide. And the last block is standard governing bodies, as I mentioned, the 3GPP, third generation partnership project, and other similar bodies are there to govern the fair use or regulation of licensing terms, non-discriminatory terms, and all of these bodies put together, I have referred to them as enablers. They are very important in the ecosystem because they provide the framework. WIPO, for example, aims at harmonization of the various patent laws in various countries. Right? Patent offices follow that, but have their own patent laws and rules and processes and examination procedures. Courts and parliament have their own dictate to promote innovation and make sure that the innovation reaches the mass user or the end user, the center block in the ecosystem, at a cheaper price. For example, a drug should not be expensive as that only rich people can afford. All those things are taken care of by the lawmaking bodies. So these are the enablers, so called. Well, that brings me to the end. I mean, I just have two more slides, which is just ending the presentation on a different note. Basically, we have a different. Not all the strategies matter, or not all innovations should be backed by strategies. In India, we have a very specific technology. I'm referring it to is at Jugaad. It's an article and published material. So where the frugal aspects, the cost economic solutions, economically viable solutions, flexible solutions, and inclusive, gives rise to this common area where the technology emerges. And it is sometimes I mean, you can just see some examples I have on the screen. They are just awesome innovations. You might just never think about the inventor who came up with these things. They don't have a PhD or a postdoctoral, I mean, let alone they have never sometimes seen the schools. Okay, they have created some of these innovations and they solve a problem. They never thought of a strategy of marketing, pricing, positioning, branding, nothing. They just thought of a problem. That is the first step, and solved it with the whatever means they obtained. My favorite, and this is the bottom left. I mean, because this is very relevant to the current pandemic situation, where a lady is taking a class from her home and she has hung the mobile phone for that because she doesn't have a stand or any means. And alongside, there is a milkman who is dispensing milk, maintaining social distance of 6 feet by a funnel which has a twisted pipe, and in the end, the milk can be collected by the customer. That brings me to the end of the presentation. I would stop sharing and probably, yeah, I can open it up for questions for the last 20 minutes. Or I can read through the questions. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there are some questions, Mr. Sharath, in the chat box,
Yeah.
which have been put up. So, do you want me to read it, or would you like to address it?
Yeah, I'll address it. I think I can read it. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4 questions I can see. So I'll read that out loudly. So this is from Fiona Saju. What is your say on open innovation strategy put forward by Tesla by opening up their patents? Okay, so from a policy standpoint, humanity standpoint, I think it is a very good gesture, and it will be received mostly positively by the inventor community or the community that is benefiting from it. So this reminds me of a very nice conversation I had in a conference where there was a talk about within 10 to 15 years, will the patent system become irrelevant, and it will be an open innovation society where everybody can use whatever you innovate. I actually had strong views then, because I thought if you don't protect your innovation by having some strategy, you will not benefit. If you won't benefit, you won't invest in R&D and in all these things and jargons. No, it's so much of effort. Why would you do it? But if the ecosystem becomes such that you don't benefit much out of your patents, and governments may work towards that particular, let's say, ecosystem, then more and more companies will be encouraged, like Tesla, to put forward their innovation And I'm sure Tesla will not allow all the innovations to go open, Fiona. It would be some or the other or a particular segment, and behind that decision also there would have been a good study that either those innovations may not be very very beneficial or have reached the end of their term or are not in line with their business strategy. So I would personally welcome something like that from Tesla, a very innovative company. It is a good gesture. Hope that answers the question. And the next question is, yeah, by putting idea to Google, did you mean individuals other than the company's employee? Archana Prakash, when I said Google has lot of initiatives to collect ideas from employees, they have some, I don't remember, back in 2011 they had something called Idea Labs or knowledge marathon, where they invite ideas from employees, and some of the ideas are completely tangent to what Google was doing. Google Pay, I think, was one such idea, or somebody just worked on some project. It can be anything related to Google, it can be a green innovation, and Google puts some fund and lets that person work on that idea and take it to innovation, patenting, and either licensing or just for actually adding one more patent to Google's name. So it was not people other than Google's employee, it was Google employees I meant. Next question again from Archana was, how can companies actually extend patent life in a highly competitive market? Good. So this is a question I would say more relevant in the pharmaceutical industry as compared to high tech or mobile industry or software industry. So because in the software industry, so first of all, I would maybe answer the question how and then why I'm talking about pharmaceutical sciences only. There is something called evergreening of patents in US. Okay, for pharmaceutical companies, they file for a drug and they wait for not wait for, they keep innovating and improving the drug, and just before the expiry date of that drug, let's say the 20th year, they file for a new use of that drug. Okay, they file for a new use of that drug, or they file for a slightly varied composition which will overcome the challenges of patentability even in view of their own patent. So that patent, second patent is granted, the first patent expires, and in a way the company remains the only company that can manufacture the new drug. So some form of protection can be expanded, and that's why the term evergreening of patents, you can look it up on Google, and this is for pharmaceutical companies. Now, not possible for software companies and for telecommunication inventions, because most of these technologies become obsolete. The shelf life of technologies would be anywhere between 3 to 5 years at best. So there is not much incentive to extend my patent beyond 20 years for a high-tech software or electronics and communication invention. Next question is from Subhaya, where India stands in following IP strategy in startup ecosystem. Good. So I would say in the last few years, lot of activities have happened, Subhaya, in the IP space for the startup companies. You would have either heard or read about these innovations. Prime Minister announces lot of rebates and tax holidays for the first 3 years. It also gives rebates on money spent on IP activities in some form. Third point, the patent office itself has certain rules that allow startup companies to go for an expedited procedure of patenting, because it may have an impact on their funding capability. Fourth, there are a lot of incubation facilities and other what do we say, enablers from the government of India, appointed officers who are available for consulting by the startup companies to help them innovate, to help them incubate, and create intellectual property. Fifth, uh, there is a lot of, I would say, loan available in some form or the other, or relaxed norms for research and development, sometimes funding by various ministries if there is an IP component. So I would say in the last, especially last 4 or 5 years, India has really done a lot. I would say still a lot needs to be done, but done a lot. Second point, it is a little early to comment on the effectiveness of these initiatives. Maybe 2, 3 years or 5 years down the line, we would have more data points. Uh, yes. Okay. So the next question is, thank you for the comments from the audience. The next question is from Vimula Narasimha Rao. Uh, can we obtain patent on unique management practice being adopted in an engineering college? Okay, so this is a standard patentability question. So if you are aware of Indian patent laws or US patent laws, you have three challenges for any invention to be patentable. It should be novel. So when I read unique management, I am assuming it is novel, it is new. Okay, management practice. Second is it has to be not obvious to a person skilled in the art. And let us assume that it is not. And there is an inventive step, and this is just awesome management practice followed in engineering college, and it surpasses a threshold. Third, it should have an industrial application. Now that's a question to dwell deeper, that can it be commercially exploited at an industrial scale, and not necessarily industrial scale, at a scale where you can have multiple use of this module and have a commercial angle to it. Okay, even if you actually cross these hurdles, there is a fourth hurdle which you have to cross, especially in India. Section 3 talks about what are not patentable inventions. In that, you will see subsections where a method to do a mental activity is not patentable. A software per se is not patentable, right? So there are some examples here and there. So you have to make sure that it is not just a method to do something differently, and two people do it differently, saying it differently. Presentation of information in management practice is not patentable. So you have to read carefully and understand, and maybe guide differently, invent it so that it can be patentable. Yeah, I think that was the last question from Vimula Narasimha Rao. I think I can take any more questions. There are good 9 more minutes available.
Yeah, I have it.
Yeah, please. Uh,
Hello, am I audible?
yes, now you're audible.
Okay. So there was a slide wherein you're speaking on the aspect of taking a call on the patents based on the strength of the patent to whether to file 10 patents or whether to file 2 patents. So what are the factors that decide the strength over there? Is it the standards of patentability, or is it a business decision?
Okay. If you remember the 4 C's of diamond, I had on that slide what will make a patent valuable. I will repeat those. One is that, so I think in a way you are right, some part of it you are right, that you have to determine what is the inventive gap. One of the 4 factors I talked about on the patent slide was, is it solving a problem which is a huge problem, it's a big problem, and the inventive gap is huge, it is awesome innovation. Okay. Second thing is how crowded the space is, as you hinted upon, that if there are other technologies very close, be able to close the barrier for a long time of say 10 years, right? If it's a pharmaceutical drug that 100% treats cancer, by all means go ahead. So I mean, because cancer, there is no anti-cancer drug that will treat you 100%, one pill. Second, the innovation, the gap is like huge, nobody has been able to. Third is the commercial aspect of it, and there is a huge market for it. If you create a particular medicine for a very specific type of malaria caused by a very specific type of mosquito, which is only found in 1 acre of land in the world, is not a good commercially viable option. It is an invention, but you may not be able to sell it to a lot of people, right? You may not be able to. So these are the factors you take into account when you have the ideas, 10 ideas. You have to rank them based on these factors and pick two or three and do a good search, understand the landscape, understand the market, understand the consumer. The end user is the king. Okay, will they like it? Will they solve will it solve their problem? Then you zero in upon, okay, this one invention I should go for because I have only this much money. Hope that answers the question, Jasmine.
Yeah. So if there are any further questions, I may request the participants to kindly unmute their microphones and pose it directly to the resource person.
Okay, I can see.
I think there is one question in the chat
Yeah,
box.
there is one question from Fiona. Yeah, yes. So Fiona has asked a question that for recent technologies like Internet of Things, when complex licensing agreements are inevitable, especially between dissimilar industries, how would it affect innovation? Yeah, so it can actually affect both ways. If it's a very well established company which has a solid IP team, and they have all the other technologies they have worked on, and they know the process and the agreements and the format, and they have an upper hand on the negotiations, it will be a little easier, or they would easily be able to go through the process. On the other hand, if it's a startup or a new company, IoT will not be easy, because as you mentioned, there will be lot of agreements you have to enter into, licensing agreements. And small companies are usually, let's say, not seen as a threat by the big companies, because they know that this small company I can actually buy, or I can use my patents, I can assert my rights, or I can do something. So you have to be very careful. If the inventive potential is huge, only then go for IoT inventions. Otherwise, it's going to take a lot of collaboration, which is not by choice. You have to collaborate, and end of the day, you will be a tiny component in that big thing where the innovation came from you, but the collaborators would take away or a good portion of your innovation. Hope that answers the question, Fiona. Okay, I think 4 more minutes
Yeah.
left.
Any further questions? I believe no. So I'll request Fiona Saju, research scholar at IUCIPRS, to kindly propose a vote.
Good evening, everyone. Dear Dr. Sharath, thank you so much for such an insightful session on intellectual property as a
Right.
strategic tool for protection of technology. So you made us explore way beyond a normal understanding of IP or patents. The session was really informative and beneficial, especially for the research scholars of our center, I hope. So on behalf of IUCIPRS family and all the participants, I'd like to extend our sincere thanks for sparing your valuable time with us, enlightening each of us. Thank you so much, sir. And I thank all the participants for your active participation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fiona. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharath. I think it
Yeah.
was indeed, a presentation that catered to a diverse audience. So you started from the nuances and very carefully crafted the presentation. So it was curated in a very apt manner, and I believe it was indeed every participant would have definitely understood what you were trying to convey. even though we had a diverse participation. Thank you for actually accepting our invitation in the first place, and I may also, convey my gratitude to. Am I audible? Convey my gratitude to Manoj sir as well, because he allowed you to participate in this program.
Sure.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks a lot, and we hope to have some
Sure.
future collaborations with you as well in, in times to come. Yeah.
Absolutely. Sure.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. So just
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Doctor. Thank you. Yeah.
yeah.
Would just like to say thanks to all the audience here, and Fiona, thank you in particular for the vote of thanks. Dr. Ratish for inviting me over and giving me an opportunity to share, my little bit of knowledge I have. And the audience was lovely and no interruptions and very, very patient. Questions were very valid. I really hope that I could answer them. And you can always find me on LinkedIn. My phone number is there, and if you have any questions or any after presentation thoughts, I would be very glad to connect with you, anybody. Thank you so much once again to the entire team for organizing this.
Thank you. Thank you. So, participants, kindly don't log off. So, I just have an announcement to make. So, tomorrow at 2 p.m., you will have the multiple choice question examination. So, it's a 30 minutes examination. We'll be just starting 2 minutes prior to 2, that is at 1:58 p.m. We'll be posting the questions in the WhatsApp group as well as in the Google groups. So request you to please attend that examination as it is mandatory, and also will not be in a position to give you an extension of time. So you have to sort out the internet connectivity issues while starting the examination. So it's a 30-minute test, and you have to complete and submit the examination within the 30-minute time frame. Once the time passes, you will not be in a position to submit it since it's a timed examination. I'll also be sending across instructions in the WhatsApp group as well as through the Google groups. So best of luck for your examination. So it starts at 2 p.m. and then ends at 2:30. And at 3 p.m. we'll have the valedictory ceremony and the feedback. So thank you all.
Once again, thank you so much. You have a good evening. Bye bye.